5.
Make sure that CCN clip ready. We need it for the second.
4.
Blacks from the Clarendon correspondent coming through now.
3.
All the international stories in the folder. Good to
2.
Newsreaders all set.
Yeah, man, everything set, everything ready.
1.
From the grid to Morant Point, NewsTalk 93 FM has got it covered. Across the 7 seas to the 4 corners of the world, it's all captured on the 93 radar. 93.1, 93.3, 93.5, 93.7 and 93.9 on your FM dial. World News at 5 starts now.
Very good afternoon to you. Time for the 5 o'clock news roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
Coming up in this newscast, father of 11-year-old Prickly Pole student who allegedly died on her way to protest questions school's decision.
Opposition leader Andrew Holness says Prickly Pole saga is a case of political corruption.
Finance Minister writes letter of intent to IMF boss regarding implementation of Jamaica's fund-supported economic reform program.
And furniture shortage at Clancarthy High School in Kingston causes hundreds of students to remain at home.
And now the details. The father of 11-year-old Akella Lewis, the Prickly Pole Primary School student who died last Friday, is questioning why his daughter was allowed to leave the school compound without his knowledge. The child's biological father, Ernie Smith, says his daughter told him days before that she had wanted extra money to go on a trip planned for Friday. He says he does not understand why the child who lives with him was allowed to leave the compound without his knowledge.
No, he sent my daughter to school. Yeah, I sent my daughter to school to go for no politics trip. Because if you did know a trip I go use on the school like it's a politics trip. You send my daughter to school like again. Because Monday, alright. For instance, you have to never go to school the first week because a uniform will get sorted out. So the second week, uniform will get sorted out. So she go to school on Monday. She come back home to me and say, Daddy, you know, so you go for one trip. So we just see, and 2 days after, you see the other way you're going like you want to grow on your style. So school, she just open. And you go tell Rasta about trip already. You say, yes, that's what we say.
Father of 11-year-old Akella Lewis, Ernie Smith. The 5th grade student reportedly took sick at school in the midst of the organizing of a protest and died on her way to hospital. Meanwhile, the Jamaica Teachers Association says it fully endorses the withdrawal of the appointment of the chairman of the school board of the Prickly Pole Primary School. The JTA says with the critical role the school boards play in the education system, persons so appointed should have the education of the nation's children as their sole agenda.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Andrew Holness is expressing sympathy to the parents, relatives and friends of young Akella Lewis, who met an untimely death while a demonstration involving children ensued at the Prickly Pole Primary School recently. The opposition leader says the safety and security of Jamaica's children at school should always be foremost, and well-thinking Jamaicans should be disturbed at the recent developments at the school. He says it is the opposition's view that the integrity of the administration of the school has been compromised by political interests and considerations and gave rise to circumstances in which a child enrolled at the school lost her life. Holness says there is a conflict of interest when the Member of Parliament, Lisa Hanna, against whom the protest was launched in the vicinity of the school, is also the minister responsible for the Child Development Agency, the CDA. The CDA was tasked by Minister Hanna to confirm that the death of the child was a result of the protest, which involved the children in attendance at Prickly Pole Primary. He says it is also curious that the Minister of Education would act so expeditiously to dismiss the school board chairman without the full administrative process of hearings and independent investigations being followed.
Meanwhile, opposition spokesperson on education and youth, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, is calling for Jamaica's young children to be kept out of politics. Senator Johnson-Smith's comments come against the background of the death of young Akela Lewis and concerns at the Pritlipole Primary School and statements and actions by Youth Minister Lisa Hanna and Education Minister Ronald Thwaites. Johnson-Smith says it is sad that the death of the child has been caught up in what is clearly an internal political war, and the sorrow that her family and school friends must be going through has been impacted by issues which have nothing to do with the best interests of the child. She says people need to recognize that children should not be involved in protests, whether political or otherwise, and persons, especially school personnel, who participate in these practices should be held accountable. The opposition senator says with the allegations and counter-allegations being made, the police should be permitted to conclude their investigations, as should the independent office of the Children's Advocate.
Minister of Finance Dr. Peter Phillips has written a letter of intent to Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, Christine Lagarde, regarding Jamaica's continued implementation of its fund-supported economic reform program. The letter, dated September 4, stated that Jamaica has continued the steadfast implementation of its fund-supported economic reform program aimed at overcoming the long-standing problems of low growth and high debt. It said that all quantitative fiscal and monetary performance criteria under the program have been met for all quarterly test dates, with the exception of the March 2015 nominal target for the primary surplus for the central government, which was missed by a narrow margin. Phillips also informed Lagarde that the government has implemented all of the structural benchmarks that were included in the program, with some minor delays. Despite this, he says the government remains fully committed to meeting the objectives of the program as well as its specific targets.
The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says it has completed its 9th review under the IMF's Extended Fund Facility, the EFF, for Jamaica, and has approved a further $39.7 million drawdown. In a release yesterday, the IMF Executive Board said it had completed the review of Jamaica's economic performance under the program, supported by a 4-year special drawing rights SDR of $615.38 million. About $932.3 million at the time of approval. The completion of the review enables an immediate purchase of an amount equivalent to $39.7 million. The EFF arrangement was approved on May 1, 2013. Following the board decision or discussion of the review, Deputy Managing Director and Acting IMF Chair Min Zhu said the authorities remain firmly committed to the economic program supported by the Extended Fund Facility for Jamaica. Meanwhile, new World Bank country manager Galina Sortirova has congratulated the Jamaican government for its progress over the last 3 years in reducing its debt to gross domestic product rate. She says the move is even more impressive as very few believe Jamaica would have made the progress. Sotirova has credited Jamaica's commitment to its structural adjustment program and says the recent buyback of the Petrocarib debt was also a positive development. She says the focus now must be on achieving more noticeable growth.
Justice Minister Senator Mark Golding says he believes the Jamaican economy is set to grow as recent achievements provide a clear basis for hope and confidence.
We have a steadily reducing debt to GDP ratio, which has come down from approximately 146% of GDP at the end of 2011 to now, I'm told, 125%. We also have a massively reduced current account deficit, again from well over 10% of GDP at the end of 2011 to less than 3% of GDP this year. The competitively priced currency has enabled the high rates of growth that are now being enjoyed in those areas where Jamaica can be internationally competitive. We're also seeing falling unemployment and increased job creation. We are seeing falling interest rates and, of course, low rates of inflation.
Senator Golding says the achievements are the outcome of what he says is the prudent economic management of the country that has led to Jamaica passing 9 successive IMF tests.
These achievements have required significant sacrifice on the part of various sectors of the society, public sector workers, investors who held Jamaican debt in the domestic economy, and others, taxpayers. It's required discipline and it's required hard work.
The Justice Minister says his ministry has also played a key role by ensuring that many pieces of legislation that were structural benchmarks under the IMF program were developed and passed into law.
Those measures include the introduction of a super form to enable persons forming businesses and incorporating companies to get all their required statutory filings, NIS, NHT, GCT, and a startup tax compliance certificate, all at the same time by filing a single document with the Companies Office. We've also seen the creation of a completely new and coherent system of secured finance, the Security Interest in Personal Property Act, or SIPA as we call it. And we've seen a major modern overhaul of the laws that deal with financially distressed businesses, which now focuses on rehabilitating businesses that have the potential to be viable. And we, of course, in Customs have seen the introduction of the ASICUDA system of electronic filing and tracking, which is an internationally recognized system for Jamaica Customs.
Justice Minister Senator Mark Golding, speaking at the recently held Jamaica Employers Foundation breakfast, the minister said there is hope for Jamaica. He says the focus now should be on continuing the work that is underway to improve the country's economic standing both locally and in the international market.
You're listening to news on NewsTalk 93 FM. It's 11.5 minutes after 5. Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips is to host a radio call-in program to allow Jamaicans to ask questions about the government's handling of the economy. Dr. Phillips says it will give him a chance to explain the issues in relation to Jamaica's economic reform efforts.
Park of elections have been searching for, and in fact begun something. You would have heard various reports, promos about the economic reform program, and that have been aired, and various other efforts to get some public effort out, because we think that there is need, particularly in a program and a time as difficult as this is, to really explain in more detail what the issues are.
Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips. The program, called The Finance Minister, will begin airing in October. It follows the recent move by Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller to provide answers to questions from the public in a feature dubbed Ask Your Prime Minister in the Star newspaper.
Political analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang says the first duty of the government is to ensure the protection of the Jamaican people.
Well, the first one is to show saying protect the people. The first form of our government is that the first thing a road to keep the people safe, you know. They're fighting, a man stung on a road, I'm going to stop the fighting, people will feel safer. And then you have advance from there. So the crime, I would think, the economy and the crime, but the crime has certainly always been my biggest issue, especially of young children. And you want to feel safe. And then the crime is great, the murder just keeps going back.
He also points to health and education as critical areas to which people must have full access.
The other two big ones, obviously, are health and education, but those are underpinned by a decent economy with finance. It takes cash to care. Because if you have a certain budget, you can use it wisely or not wise, and so it should be used wisely to this three mandate: keep the people safe physically, health-wise if the ill health comes, and educate them. With the mandates, when money is being squandered, you have less money to spend on the core. And I keep looking at these massive deficits. It's amazing. I don't hear the JLP talk about it. And my big beef with the JLP, they're such a wimpy opposition.
Political analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang. He was speaking on Fresh Start with hosts Dr. Aimani Tafari Ama and Delano Seavright this morning.
And on the same program, Chang said a tax plan put forward by Joseph M. Matalan in 2013 was the best tax plan for Jamaica, since it would help to reduce the problems of importers experiencing difficulties at the ports.
taxes are always complicated. And when you talk about taxes, the best tax plan I've seen in the country was a few years ago, the Matalan tax. It was very well thought out. It had to be comprehensive enough. You take off here to put on there. And the upshot of it would have been a fair tax plan, and the richer would have paid more. And because a few people jump up about the GCT on the basic food, made it an emotional issue, not looking at the fact that that would have been compensated by the other tax removed.
Kevin O'Brien Chang, he says people importing items from overseas are not paying the requisite duties on them, and as a result this creates a problem with the rate of the general consumption tax.
Education Minister Ronald Thwaites and officials from Clancarthy High School in Kingston are currently meeting to discuss a furniture shortage at the school, which has caused hundreds of students to remain at home. Thwaites has said the shortage of furniture was caused by destructive students and that the Education Ministry is very concerned about the destruction of furniture at the school. He says that given the country's financial position, the leadership of schools must ensure that their infrastructure is adequately cared for. The Education Minister says the situation at Clancarthy raises serious questions about inventory and the care of school property. The administration of Clancarthy reportedly has had to ask at least 600 students to remain at home for some days because of a shortage of furniture. And in news from the region, newly elected Trinidadian Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has called for healing in the country following the country's very bruising election period. Rowley says Trinidad's 39th year as an independent nation should cause Trinidadians to reflect on how far they have come and how much further they have to go. Rowley says the elections are over and there is no room for hatred, bitterness or rancor. He made the statements yesterday as he delivered Republic Day greetings at the first sitting of the 11th Parliament in Port of Spain.
And of course, it is Republic Day in Trinidad today. It's a national holiday, so happy Republic Day to all you Trinidadians tuning in. At this time now, we join the BBC for international news.
BBC News with Jerry Smith. King Salman of Saudi Arabia has ordered a full review of the country's plans for the annual Hajj pilgrimage after 700 people died in a crush outside the Muslim holy city of Mecca. More than 850 people were injured. The king also expressed his condolences to the families involved in the disaster, the worst in 25 years. President Barack Obama's spokesman has said that when Mr. Obama and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin meet in New York next Monday, their first encounter in nearly a year, the top item on the agenda should be Ukraine. But Mr. Putin's spokesman has said the Russian president wants the emphasis to be placed on Syria. The German, French and British foreign ministers are meeting in Paris to firm up a common position on ending the Syrian conflict. Earlier, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Syria's President Assad should be involved in future talks, although other countries disagree. The Cuban President Raul Castro has arrived in New York ahead of the UN General Assembly next week. It's the first time a Cuban leader has visited the US in 15 years. Pope Francis has also arrived in New York. Earlier today, he became the first head of the Roman Catholic Church to address a joint session of the US Congress. During his 50-minute speech, the Pope appealed for the abolition of the death penalty worldwide. The Kremlin has confirmed that President Putin has phoned the pop star Elton John and proposed a meeting to discuss gay rights. A week ago, two Russian comedians tricked Elton John into thinking he was talking to the president. BBC News.
Broadcast Jamaican and NewsTalk 93 FM now gear the news in the Jamaican language.
Good evening. My name is Kadeen Marshall and this is the news in the Jamaican language. The father of 11 years old Akila Lewis, who been to go to Prickly Paul Primary School, were dead Friday gone. I asked why they make him daughter left the school compound and not tell him. Some reporters said the picnic take sick when them been a plan one protest and she dead when them a carry go hospital. The picnic father, Ernest Smith, said him daughter been tell him some day before so she want some extra money for couple one trip but the school been a plan Friday gone. Him said him no know how him daughter live with him and the school never tell him say she left the school. Peter Phillips, who is the Minister for Finance, I got host one radio call-in program for the people in the country, ask some questions on how the government have managed the economy. The program name called the Finance Minister. It will start in October. Dr. Phillips said this will give him a chance to explain the things that may affect the Jamaican economy to the people them. This come after the Prime Minister, so she will start answer some questions to the public. Them call it Ask the Prime Minister in the Star newspaper. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, send one warning to the Jamaican government, so they need to cut down on the amount of people who are now working in the country, since them see signs that the country economy grow. Them said the IMF Executive Board passed the money what Jamaica must get under them 4-year agreement, so the country get one extra US $39.7 million. According to Min Zhu, the IMF fully committed to the economic program, but him said the country need to grow some more and cut down on underemployment. News from the rest of the Caribbean. Nicolas Maduro, who the president for Venezuela, said him support the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of Our Americas ALBA partnership where them have with Latin America and the Caribbean country them. Maduro been in Dominica yesterday and him give the country over 300 hours after Tropical Storm Erica mashed them up last month and killed over 30 people. On top of that, him said the country them in Latin America and the Caribbean must work together some more and have more respect for them one another. News from foreign. Some people blocked the road and are crossing in southern Nepal over one new law were passed in the country Sunday gone. The law made the country join 28 million people in a 7 group and join some of the ethnic group them together. The people then block off the 2 main border crossing from India were shut off the country oil supply line. The people them were cussed come from 2 different ethnic group and them said the new law a fight against them. My name is Kadeen Marshall and that are the news in the Jamaican language.
Broadcast Jamaican and NewsTalk 93 FM just gave the news in the Jamaican language.
The 5 o'clock Sports Roundup is brought to you by NewsTalk 93 FM, life-changing radio.
Good afternoon. I am Michaela Drama Johns with your 5 o'clock sports roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM, and I am beginning with football. This evening, VMBS will square off with the Housing Agency of Jamaica in the KSA Business House Favasad competition. They will have kick-off at 6:30 p.m. The same time, Mobile Reserves face Connect Services Limited and Kirk Distributors Limited play ICD. The second bout of matches, starting at 7:15 p.m., will have First Heritage Cooperative meet Fontana Pharmacy and National Health Fund NHF Challenge Peak Bottling Company. All matches will be played at the National Water Commission NWC Playfield in Mona. As it relates to the KSA Business House Football League, Petrojam yesterday handed Peak Bottling Company a 3-1 defeat in the Raymond Choir Memorial match. The game is contested between the winners of Division 1 and 2 of the KSA Business House football competition. Petrojam, who were winners of Division 1, took the Choir Trophy for a third time and will now meet the winners of the Sentence Business House football competition Couples Tower Isles in the Champion of Champions match. It will be held at Drax Hall at a date to be announced. Montego Bay United MVU played to a 3-all draw earlier this week in their Scotiabank Champions League fixture versus Major League Soccer MLS club DC United. MVU were in pole position to be the first local side to hand an MLS side a defeat, but surrendered their 3-0 lead, with the first answer coming in the 59th minute, while the equalizer came in stoppage time. DC United lead Zone H with 10 points, while Arabe Unido, whom MVU will play next month, are on 3 points, and the local team at the foot of the tables on 1. MVU lost their opening pair of games 3-0. Further afield, FIFA today folded by handing over emails from suspended official Jerome Valk after having blocked access. This was despite President Sepp Blatter saying the entity should cooperate no matter how close to home the investigations get. Blatter himself is a target of both criminal cases being faced by the World Football's governing body. FIFA continued blocking attempts to unseal emails from Valk's business and personal accounts despite a public request by Switzerland's Attorney General Michael Lauber yesterday. Meanwhile, the Swiss Federal Office of Justice has authorized the extradition of Venezuelan FIFA official Rafael Esquivel. He is to face corruption charges in the United States. Esquivel, arrested in Zurich on May 27, is suspected of accepting bribes for the award of sports marketing contracts, which had major influences on the competitive situation while distorting the market for media rights in connection with the Copa America. The bribes related to the 2007, 2015, 2016, 2019 and 2023 Copa America tournaments were allegedly worth millions of dollars. And the final story for football today. Championship action saw Huddersfield Town net a late equaliser to hold Nottingham Forest to a 1-1 stalemate. Mendes de Gracia netted today's opener for Nottingham in the 23rd minute. Emir Hughes, however, levelled 6 minutes from the end of regular time. The midfielder struck from 25 yards, with the shot being deflected over the head of the keeper to see the two sides share the spoils. And for cricket, poor pitch conditions yesterday forced an abandonment of the third Jamaica Scorpions 4-day trial match at Sabina Park. The pitch, which was into its second day, saw at least 2 players receiving body bruises and injury. Their batsman Andre McCarthy, who was hit on the finger on day 1 and had to retire hurt, and Shakaya Thomas, who was hit 5 times, 2 to the head and hand and 1 on his fingers. Meanwhile, according to Kevin Peterson, Andrew Strauss's decision to overlook him for the recent Ashes is vindicated by the nation's win. Following their being whitewashed in Australia over the winter of 2013-2014, Peterson was dropped by England. Strauss, England's director of cricket, claimed a massive trust issue had threatened harmony within the team camp. England regained the recent Ashes with a 3-2 victory, and Peterson believes Strauss was proved correct in his decision to leave him out. And that's it for the 5 o'clock sports roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I am Mikhail Drama Johns saying stay tuned for the business news and weather report.
The 5 o'clock sports roundup was brought to you by NewsTalk 93 FM, life-changing sports radio.
At 5:28, let's look at business news. On the local stock market today, the index advanced by 89.23 to close at 95,827.25. The junior market index also advanced by 9.32 to close at 959.80. Market activity resulted from trading in 24 stocks, of which 8 advanced, 8 declined, and 8 traded firm. Market volume amounted to 18.1 million units, valued at over $28.8 million. Lime was today's volume leader. Stocks advancing: Carreras, D&G, Grace, JMMB 7.5, Lasco Manufacturing, Sagicor Group, Scotia Group, Scotia Investments. Stocks declining: Carb Cement, Siboney, Honeybun. Broilers, JMMB 8.75, Lasco Financial, and Lime. On the foreign exchange market, the US dollar closed at $118.96, the pound $181.50, the Canadian $89.10, and the euro $134.20. That's business news.
And now we take a look at the weather. There is a trough across Jamaica which will remain across the island until tomorrow. A high-pressure ridge is expected to build across the area thereafter. In the forecast for tonight, conditions will be partly cloudy.
To end the news, The main points. Father of 11-year-old Prickly Pole student who allegedly died on her way to a protest questions the school's decision.
Opposition leader Andrew Holness says Prickly Pole saga is a case of political corruption.
Finance Minister writes letter of intent to IMF boss Christine Lagarde.
And furniture shortage at Clancarthy High School in Kingston causes hundreds of students to remain at home.
That's your 5 o'clock news package right here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
The evening edition with